Hey guys, welcome to the Girl Take No podcast. I am your host, Shani Sanders, and today we have special guests with us. It is Andrea Ippolito. She is the founder and CEO of SimpliFed, and SimpliFed is a maternal health tech platform that helps parents access feeding support, breastfeeding support. And I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, I think it's taken by most insurances.
You got it.
Okay, good. So welcome to the show. Welcome.
Well, thanks so much for having me. So excited to be having this conversation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is a really good conversation to have because I myself didn't breastfeed, but I have a lot of friends who've been through these struggles of trying to breastfeed or breastfeeding and feeling super exhausted. So before we get into any of those, kind of give me, on here, we like to get the story behind the brand. So give me the story behind what made you start this company. Like, what's the story behind it?
Well, I just really appreciate the opportunity to share it because, we're a parent-led company and our lived experience definitely helped inform SimpliFed. And so I'm a biomedical engineer by background, worked in medical devices, worked in the federal government. And then at the tail end of my time in government, I was pregnant with my first daughter and we moved to upstate New York, had my first daughter, and saw how hard baby feeding was. My daughter was born 3 weeks early, so not quite preterm, but earlier than expected.
Yes.
And so she was underweight, born at about 5 pounds. And then, like a lot of babies, she dropped weight and was down to 4 pounds. And I just had a heck of a time with breastfeeding. She continued to lose weight. You've 3D printed this baby after 9 months and you're just so excited.
Baby's like that 3D printed.
Right? And, your first task as a parent is feeding it and baby arrives. And, I personally felt like I was failing at my first task as a parent. And I started combo feeding and I did end up getting support, but it wasn't my original goal. But the good news is I started formula feeding and baby started gaining weight. My mental health improved, all the things. But, in retrospect, it was sad because I wanted access to support. And I learned that, this is the former healthcare federal bureaucrat nerd in me. I learned that, health plans are required under the Affordable Care Act to cover baby feeding support, but the vast majority of health plans weren't in compliance with that policy. And as we know more than ever is that it's so important that families get access to support covered by their health plans. They're right under federal law. And so set out with other parents to found SimpliFed and democratize access to baby feeding support services. And one of our big takeaways as well was no matter how you feed your baby, formula feeding, breastfeeding, pumping, donor milk, whatever that looks like to you, we have your back and you get support from us covered by your health plan at no cost to you, which again is you're right under federal law. And so that was the other missing piece that we found in our own lived experiences that felt like there's a lot of judgment out there. Whether you're formula feeding and we realized that it can't be that way. We got to meet parents where they're at. No matter how they feed their baby, we should have their back.
Yeah, that's 100% true. So did your background in biomedicine engineer, did that contribute to this business? Or that's such a big transition, I feel like, did it contribute to this?
Yeah, for sure. So I was, a benchtop scientist engineer at this medical device company. And to be totally honest, I was a pretty mediocre engineer, pipetting, and I'm not the most fancy person around. But what I loved is thinking about the systems surrounding the devices. And that's what caused me to go to grad school. And I became in love with telehealth. And this was 13 years ago. And my research and grad school was for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on how do we leverage telehealth to improve access to behavioral health care for service members faced with post-traumatic stress. So this was before the adoption of telehealth that we see today.
Yep.
And I saw the power of telehealth to improve access to care for folks that need access to mental health care. And we'd have, service members in upstate rural New York at Fort Drum that they had been deployed in Afghanistan, and they were all 20,000 service members were coming back at the same time, and their behavioral health providers were incredibly overwhelmed. And then the other side of the country, in Tacoma, Washington, Joint Base Lewis McChord, their service members were still deployed, and their behavioral health providers were incredibly underwhelmed. And so I saw the power of telehealth to really improve access to care. And then fast forward, when I had my first daughter, you had this little newborn nugget, terrified to leave the house. And this was before COVID, by the way. Putting them into that car seat, going to another clinic appointment. I saw again the power of telehealth to improve access to care, to get access to support, say at 2 a.m. or on the weekend when you need it. Baby feeding, no matter how you feed your baby, is a no days off sport, right? And so having access to support when and where you need it from the comfort and safety of your own home, so you don't have to strap in that precious little newborn to a car seat, is so important. So it reminded me a lot of the work I did with the military health system on how we improve access with telehealth. And so leveraged that and brought that to SimpliFed.
Oh, that's so awesome. What challenges, because when you talk about breastfeeding, you talk about feeding your baby, a lot of times people, like you said, could be challenges with that. People don't want to talk about it. What challenges did you face with starting this company in the beginning? Or if you're still facing challenges, that is too,
Oh, holy moly. And, every day, it's always funny when you're talking to entrepreneurs and they're on amazing podcasts like this or tech there's a bit of this revisionist history, right?
Yes.
Company, and here we are, and everything is great. But wow, starting a company is tough, and I have 2 little kids, 2 daughters under 5. I'm pregnant with a third, and I think we need to do more in this country to support small business owners, and especially small business owners that are parents.
Yes.
Especially small business owners that are parents that are moms.
Yes.
Women, we know, are half the workforce now.
Yep.
We have not evolved to support women in the workforce, and very biased, but I think that gets even more heightened when you're a small business owner.
Yeah.
And that's been my experience. Is it's hard, right? I'm pregnant with my third daughter. We have a small, very mighty team, but what does parental leave look like for me?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like when you're an entrepreneur, what is parental leave? You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost as if it doesn't exist because you're 24 hours, 7 days a week. An entrepreneur, it seems like there's no days off.
Totally. That's exactly it. And so what do you do? So we need more federal and state policies in place that can help support small business owners. So that's been a fun challenge. Secondly, one of the things I learned with working in government is you have to respect bureaucracy. And I know that sounds like a super funny thing to say, but where bureaucracy is there for good reason. However, when you're trying to democratize access to a service that's supposed to be covered by law, but hasn't been over the last decade, you have to wait in the bureaucracy for a bit. And that truly helps us accomplish our mission of democratizing access. So what do I mean by that? So we work with commercial health plans, we work with Medicaid plans, and we work with TRICARE health plans, serving families across the U.S. And unfortunately, when you're working often with Medicaid plans, who folks are often the most underserved, there is that extra level of bureaucracy. However, it's good. It's all good. It's to make sure things are fair. We're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. However, take some more effort, some time. And alongside, you got to build trust with the folks that you're serving. And that takes time. And so a lot of what we try to do is do a lot of listening to parents, community-based organizations, so that we can build those trusted relationships with them. Again, takes time. System change is not something that happens overnight. It's incremental, and it's all about building trust along the way.
Yeah, that is so true. I know it wasn't an easy role partnering with these organizations, these health organizations, or either was it hard to convince them like, hey, this is an important part of a woman's health journey is how she feed her baby. Because, as we get further into to talk about the journey of breastfeeding, it could be, like I said, it could be very exhausting. I had a friend who was exhausted from baby feeding, from breastfeeding, and felt like I mean, she just was so exhausted. She was delusional at times because it was almost like she was feeding the baby nonstop, and they eat so much more, where there's like a bottle, you just kind of like make it and you can just easily feed your kid, and you can still have some rest. You might be a little sleep deprived, but not as much when I feel like with a woman that breastfeeds. So I know was it difficult to convince companies to say, hey, this is why this support is needed, because it's an important part of a woman's health journey?
Well, thanks for saying that. And you're right on. Well, we have one thing on our side. And the one thing we had on our side was the fact that under federal law, this is supposed to be covered under the Affordable.
Yeah.
Most health plans were not in compliance with that policy. So good old, when you talk about carrot versus stick, good old stick side of it. But to your point, and frankly, more importantly, is breastfeeding and baby feeding, whether you're formula feeding, pumping, no matter what, baby feeding is so connected to women's health. Yeah. And I'm talking about both physical and, to your point just now, mental health. Mm-hmm. So when we're speaking with stakeholders and health plans, sadly, we have to draw the line a little bit more than we'd like to, but we make that point and we show them the medical literature that exists in this arena. I think sometimes we forget that breasts are organs and they need to be tended and cared for. Also, mom's mental health and mind is also another organ that we need to tend and care, and all the puns here, but tend to care and feed. And so having access to trusted, certified, evidence-based providers as part of this maternal health care journey is oh so critical. And lactation consultants who are baby feeding experts, again, no matter how you feed your baby, formula feeding, breastfeeding, pumping, donor milk, etc., having access to a certified, highly trained, evidence-based provider as part of that clinical care team during that perinatal journey has been missing today.
Yeah.
And it should be covered by health plans. So a lot of what we do is make the case of that, even though sadly we shouldn't have to, because breastfeeding, formula feeding is women's health, and women's health is health.
Yeah, it is health. It's so funny you mentioned that it's been missing for a while. And I can remember where it's like most of the time when you have a baby, you're in the hospital, it's just that nurse comes in, try to help you, show you how to breastfeed, how to get the baby to latch. And it's kind of like, that's it. It just stops from there. No one comes home with you. No one says, hey, do you need that extra support to try to breastfeed? And you try to go online, see what you can find. But you're right. It was like, once you leave the hospital, that's kind of like where it stopped.
Totally. And what's so crazy frustrating about it is just physiologically, your milk doesn't come in often for 3 to 5 days after you leave the hospital. So you're getting this support, in the hospital. By the way, you've just had this crazy medical procedure, whether that's C-section or vaginal delivery, and you're, I'll speak for myself, delirious. And kind of what just happened? You're recovering. And this nurse is coming in trying to help, but you're like, it's coming out because it's still pretty early. It's droplets at first. And so there's a mismatch of when it's taking place with when you're getting support. And that's why we believe so much in this telehealth model. Because it meets families when you need it postpartum, and you get that access to support. And, and the last thing I'll say as well on this topic is that when you talk to friends and family, say overseas, say, let's say in Europe, I have a close friend that lives in Berlin, Germany. Yeah. She's talking about amazing nurses coming to her home, once a week postpartum. And wow, that sounds awesome.
It does.
In America, while we, are this great country and we have this great healthcare system, I feel like we're so far behind with maternal health. And by the way, that's just not like us anecdotally saying that. The data shows that. And we know that women are left behind. We know with Black women, maternal mortality is 3 times the rate of white women. And that's just unacceptable. And so there's just so much more we need to do because we're so far behind our peers.
We really are. That mortality rate you talked about among Black women has been a big topic and a big issue. And you hope that one day, because, you know, as you mentioned, your friend living in another country, and it's like, do you ever see us as a country getting to that point where we take women's health a little bit more seriously? We take African-American women's health a little bit more seriously when it comes to pregnancy and providing that type of support? Do you ever, or that's just like a dream state to be in?
So I try to be an optimistic, hopeful person, but I gotta be honest, it's hard to see it right now.
Yeah.
It's hard in this moment in 2023 and what's happened with women's health in the last year. I don't remember her name, and I do apologize because I'm not giving credit where credit's due. But I saw this video last night about the disparities with women's health, especially with Black women. And she described it, it's a feature, not a bug. And that just like tore me, like, oh, I get like emotional thinking about it because it's just it's a feature, not a bug. And I think we have so far to go in maternal health in this country. And it's hard to see it. I do think there are steps being taken, but not fast enough. And we need systems wide change here.
Yeah. And I think the fact that it's now being more so talked about more, you know what I mean? And I can contribute that to more like social media, because had we not have certain platforms and people coming out and speaking about it, we wouldn't know. So how important would you tell a woman or a mother to be her health advocate? Because you have to advocate for yourself in your overall health. Because I myself, you know, I'm a breast cancer survivor. I didn't know I had, which was so shocking. And I know it's off topic from like, you know, breastfeeding, but just talk about women's health. And I was so surprised that one, I had it because I get mammograms and nothing is showing up, you know, but, you know, and I just thought about that. And I'm just like, had I not done certain procedures, had I not been more of an advocate for myself, where would I be right now? You know, I caught it very early, but where would I be? And so how important is it for a woman, a pregnant woman, a woman that's a new mom, to be her own health advocate?
It's so critical, and women in particular get lost in the system. And we also put others before us. And so we need to put ourselves at the forefront. And, you know, we like to say at SimpliFed, there is a safe replacement for breast milk. There is no safe replacement for a mom and a healthy, happy mom. And so we as women need to put ourselves. So what does this look like in practice? So I'm pregnant with my third kid. I'm in the OB yesterday. Love my OB. But two things. One is I had preeclampsia with my first daughter. Weirdly, I flipped the switch and I had extremely low blood sugar and anemia with my second daughter. Wow. And I am halfway through my pregnancy and low blood pressure is popping up again, which is actually somewhat normal at this stage, but it's something you gotta stay on top of. And I noticed myself getting dizzy the other day. So don't feel like you need to be the hero, right? Make sure you're sharing these things and advocating for yourself, but staying on top of it. But secondly, another observation, because I live in a pretty rural area, huge issues with maternity care deserts in this country. And by the way, that's only getting worse to what we were talking about previously. And as one example, our local OB practice here doesn't have a lab in it. So now you have to go for all your blood work and your diabetes shot, as I affectionately call it. You have to go to this other location. And by the way, no one sets that up for you. You just have to bring this piece of paper and go sometime between 26 and 28 weeks. And I have letters behind my shoulder of all the pelvic floor appointments I haven't gone to, et cetera. And so, but that's so important. Gestational diabetes is not to be messed around with.
No, that's true.
Both for your health and your baby's health, but like you're kind of left on your own. And so if you're not quarterbacking, and apologize for the sports metaphor there, your own health, sadly, it shouldn't be this way. You should have access to navigation and support. And I think this is where issues arise. And then, but unfortunately, the system is not set up to support us. Like we're talking about a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And when you talk about your health as a new mom, particularly, especially if you want to breastfeed, your health is very important. You know what I mean? Because you're breastfeeding. So what are some of the struggles that you say most women have with breastfeeding? So those who can breastfeed, that is, because I know it's an emotional, like you said, you can feel very defeated And I have some friends who felt very defeated because they weren't able to breastfeed. They felt like, why can't I give my baby what my body naturally makes? You know what I mean? But then, I mean, it's such a hard thing, you know, and it's a very emotional journey for them. But what struggles do a mom who does breastfeed? What are some of the struggles you think she faced?
Yeah, you're so right on. Well, breastfeeding is quote unquote natural. There's nothing natural about it, right? And so we actually looked at our data recently, and I'll try to pair with stories as well, but we looked at our data. What are the top issues that parents are facing? So first, and especially in this first couple of weeks, latching, right? Yeah. Latching and is like, wow, figuring that out and positioning. Yes. I personally did not have that muscle memory. Everything about it was super awkward for me, not to mention the pain surrounding latch. And so the good news is that it shouldn't be painful. And so getting access to evidence-based support from providers that can help with that. And one of my biggest regrets was not getting access to support sooner. And because I was, fighting through that pain, and it doesn't need to be that way. Yeah. Secondly, it's supply. We know that is the second biggest reason why folks are coming to us for support. And that might be undersupply or oversupply. I always was just enougher, even when I was lucky, to your point about that. And there are some evidence-based things that you can do to get support and figure out what works for you, right? Yeah. Feeding, combo feeding are great. And if that's what you need and that's your goal, rock on. And so working with providers to come up with a plan in that arena. Another thing that we know is pumping. Let's be real. Women are half the workforce now. So whether you work inside or outside the home, having access to modern tools is important. And the cool thing is there's super modern tools like wearable breast pumps where you can be. I have a friend who is a pediatrician or in the PICU, right? And she was doing a code on a kid, which, oh my gosh, and pumping with the wearable. Oh my God. But it's so important to get size, right? A lot of people don't realize that your breast pump, there's certain sizes with it. Doing that first pump session together with a trained healthcare professional, also important. Yeah. And so that's actually the third, closely tied with 1 and 2 top issue. We also know that navigating breastfeeding and baby feeding and sleep is a critical, and designing a plan that works for you. And again, protecting your sanity and your mental health in the process. And that's, by the way, formula feeding, pumping, breastfeeding at the breast, whatever that looks like to you, figuring out a plan with sleeping matters. And then we also know there's critical moments that matter, like that transition back to work, weaning, growth spurts, combo feeding, formula. All these are big moments that matter, that having access to trusted support is oh so critical. Oh my God. Yeah. You just went down like the whole line of it. Every step of it is so important, and having a plan. Do you recommend most new moms to have a plan when it comes to breastfeeding, to try to have a schedule for it, or, try to say sleep when the babies sleep, or, you know what I mean? Do you guys recommend a plan or have a plan for them or help them put a plan in place? We do. And here's the good news. Under your health plan, they're supposed to be covering a prenatal baby feeding education and planning appointment. So a lot of times folks don't, I certainly didn't realize that you have access to that resource starting during pregnancy. And often it does feel like a later problem. I know I felt that way too. But here's why having an appointment during pregnancy matters. When a woman doesn't reach her breastfeeding expectation, she's much, much more likely to be diagnosed with postpartum depression. Right? Oh, wow. Okay. There's just a lot going on. And so what we do know is that starting during pregnancy to set expectations on what baby feeding looks like helps with that. So let me give an example. As we were talking about earlier, at first you're producing droplets, or your milk doesn't come in for 3 to 5 days. Not a lot of folks know that. I certainly did it. And you can often think you're failing if no one has told you that before you've had the chance to be successful. So we like to say to people, come in virtually, of course, do a prenatal baby feeding education appointment. Our providers do a lot of listening in that appointment to understand your goals, and then based on your goals, design a plan. Now that plan, no doubt, is going to evolve.
Yeah.
And similar to labor plans, right? Things will change, and especially with labor, kind of scarily and quickly.
Yes.
And that's another place where you need to have that advocate and access to resources like doulas, et cetera. But we love to do that prenatal education appointment to come up with a plan so that parents, we can set expectations of what baby feeding looks like and come up with that plan, that hypothesized plan that works for them.
Why do you think most of us don't know that this type of resources is like our insurance company supposed to give us this, and why don't they mention this to us? Because like you said, I didn't know half of any of this, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? When it came to baby feeding, the baby feeding process, you just know what your mom told you. You know what I mean? What you've been taught and what's you need to do when you get home. You got to feed this kid and that's what you do. But why do you think most insurances don't really educate us on that and let us know that there's resources out there to help us with it?
So what we've all felt with women's health is that it's just so far behind.
Yeah.
And, my point of view on this is that, the Affordable Care Act stood up this policy over 10 years ago. And yet the system has not caught up with that. And so it hasn't been implemented. And because women's health has been so far left behind, and we know that, by the way, when you look at federal funding, say at NSF, NIH for women's health diseases, it's way below the funding tied to in comparison to men's health specific. So you see this across the system pretty pervasively. But I think there is this, woman needs to tough it out, and often baby feeding, breastfeeding isn't seen part of the healthcare experience, but it is, both physical and mental. And so what we try to do is spread awareness of this. And I will say, once health plans find out that they're about this, they're like, whoa, like this is important. Maternal health is becoming more part of the strategy and forefront. So I do applaud health plans for stepping up. And we have some amazing health plan partners that have prioritized maternal health at the top of the list. And we as a system, as a country, have so far to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as women, we need to more so, especially new moms, especially younger moms, that really do need this type of education when it comes to what's available to them, because a lot of them don't know. I have nieces who are young moms, and when you talked about, hey, I always tell them, you take care of the babies, you take care of the kids very well, but you also need to be very aware of your own health, because without you, then where are they? And I feel like that's something younger ones, and even as women overall, sometimes we, like you said, we'll put ourselves on the back burner just to make sure the kids are good. And I think it's so important for especially younger generation, younger kids who are having kids, to understand what their health look like, what health, your health is your wealth, and how important it is as a mom and a new mom to make sure you go after these different resources. Do you guys get younger moms on your platform a lot?
We do.
Yeah.
We get moms of all different ages. We see a lot of parents and moms that, like you said, don't have often that trusted circle around them. One example is we work a lot with families in the military that are often super isolated, often younger families, and they have no one to turn to. And sometimes they just need someone that can hear them out, also validate how they're feeling. We do a lot of that with baby feeding. And so we do see that. And especially if they don't have that, say, near peer, that older sister, that parent that's around. But even if they do, having access to support is so important. And so we serve all different ages, and folks come to us with a whole bunch of different needs.
Yeah, I know they do. We talked about, so tell me, do SimpliFed support moms who chooses to not use the bottle? So the SimpliFed support moms through any type of feeding process versus breastfeeding.
Yeah, so SimpliFed is incredibly inclusive. And so what do I mean by that? We support folks that want to fully breastfeed. That's at their breast. If that's your goal, we got your back. We support moms that are fully formula feeding, and that's so important too. Selecting the right formula, transitioning to full formula, right? Making sure it's good for baby's tummy. We support families that are combo feeding, and often in this world, it's breastfeeding versus formula. The reality is most parents do both. Let's take out the verses, right?
Yeah.
This shouldn't be controversial. It sadly is.
Yeah.
No matter how someone feeds their baby, they should get access to support that's trusted, that's evidence-based. Formula feeding, right, is so connected to your baby's health and so connected to mom's health, in particular mental health. And so we support folks no matter how they feed their baby. And what we're excited to share is that, via SimpliFed, you get access to lactation support covered by your health plan. You can get access to breast pumps, and we have DME partner providers. What that means is they work with health plans to get breast pumps covered. We partner with them so parents can get easy access to breast pumps covered by your health plan at no cost to you. And we're also going to be helping to distribute formula, which after a year of the still ongoing formula shortage happening, we think having access to a trusted, affordable formula matters. And so SimpliFed's website will be distributing formula as well. So no matter how you feed your baby, we got your back, all the tools that you need.
Speaking of the shortage of formula, I was going to ask you about that. Was that something that you guys had to deal with the people on your platform, with your customers? Was it a big concern for parents who couldn't get the formula, who use formula to feed their kids? How do you guys manage that?
So we got questions about, especially if, say, the formula that you use wasn't available, what is a close enough equivalent formula so that it could be a seamless transition? And the good news is there are lots of formula brands out there. They're all authorized by the FDA, safe for your baby. And most of them have pretty much the same ingredients. They look slightly different, but the good news is that there are trusted options out there. And so, we got a lot of questions on switching brands, combo feeding, maybe increasing supply, these types of questions. And then we, of course, got a lot of questions from pregnant parents. All right, how should I prepare for this ongoing shortage?
Yeah. I know that was a big thing going on for a lot of the women in my family and friends as well. So, that's good to know how you guys handle that. Let me ask you this question. It's just me wanting to know, why is there why do we have a culture of, of like almost shaming, not shaming, but almost like women who have to use the bottle versus women who can breastfeed? Some people could be very judgmental, and I like the fact that you guys, you keep stressing on your website, we are a non-judgmental, judgmental free zone, so however you choose to feed your baby is how you choose. But there is some judgmentalness going on when it comes to breastfeeding versus bottle feeding, and how do you attack that? Like, how do you deal with that? Or what do you tell a new mom that probably feels like, well, the circle of moms I'm around, they're all breastfeeding, I'm the only one bottle feeding, and they're kind of, look down on me for bottle feeding versus breastfeeding?
There is sadly such an incredible amount of judgment and shame out there for reasons that are a mystery to me. And I think about this all 24/7. And look, however you feed your baby is your choice.
Yes.
And I do think, when you're a new parent, you just want what's best for the baby. And you know what? Doing what's best for the baby is often what's best for parent and what's best for mom. And I think there's a whole bunch of reasons how we got here from a history perspective. Formula companies over the last few decades have done some pretty gnarly things, especially in other countries, and marketing formula for folks that don't have safe access to drinking water. That caused something called the WHO code to come out in the early 80s, where essentially the WHO code talks about not promoting bottle feeding. But let's be real, that 1982 was a world away. Women are half the workforce now. And I think that culture, flipped the pendulum a little bit. There were certainly some bad actors in that flipped the pendulum, and then it just caused this judgment. And it's just such a shame, because I actually think that pressure and judgment often weirdly forces folks away from breastfeeding and getting access to support, because they're like, well, I don't want them to force me into breastfeeding. And so one of the reasons that we have that judgment-free zone is, first off, it shouldn't be controversial. However you feed your baby is your choice. And we should moms, no matter what. And secondly, you should get access to evidence-based support.
Yes.
And so, and that's so important, covered by your health plan. And so we really do try to listen and have a lot of empathy, no matter how you feed your baby, because that's what mom needs, and getting that information and support.
Yeah, that's so true. Just support is what's needed, and not feeling judged no matter how you feed your baby versus you. I even have friends who make their own baby food, and they're kind of like, oh, I would never buy my child store brand foods. You know what I mean? And we're just like, well, good for you. You have a lot of time on your hands. You make food every day, and, you know, the rest of us have to buy it. So, you know, it's so funny. It shouldn't be that way, but some people really do turn up their nose at certain things. And when it comes to your different motherhood journeys, you know, that's what I call it, different journeys of motherhood. And so, you know, one thing I want to ask, what is the mission? What is your mission for SimpliFed? What do you want to convey to the audience here, to the listeners, and to every woman, a new mom? What do you want to let them know?
Well, I'm so glad you asked this. And, you know, our North Star is democratizing access to baby feeding support, resources, and tools, whether that is breastfeeding, pumping, or formula feeding, or all of the above. I've done all the above at the same time with all of my kids. And it's so important that we're not separate from the healthcare system. So a big part of our mission is partnering with the healthcare system and community-based organizations so that we're part of it. And the reason we want to do this is because in order to make change, you got to partner with the existing system.
Yes.
You can't be in a silo, or else you're not going to be able to accomplish this big, bold goal. And so what does that mean? It's that OBs, midwives, family medicine clinicians are referring to us at that 28-week appointment. And that way we're embedded within the healthcare system. Same thing with labor and delivery. Hey, did you know you have access to this support covered by health plans? Same thing with pediatricians, working with health plans so that we can educate them. Hey, did you know that under the Affordable Care Act, this is a covered mandated benefit? Oh, interesting. All right.
Yes.
And by doing that, families are getting access for free.
Yes.
Because it's their right to support at no cost to them. Now, let's take this in a different direction. Say we didn't decide to partner with the healthcare system. Say we didn't decide to partner with health plans. Then folks are paying out of pocket for this? No thanks, right? That's expensive. I certainly don't have just extra cash laying around for that type of thing. And again, as parents deprioritize, in particular moms, their work. So we got to have, as it is their right under law, to get access to free support covered by your health plan at no cost to you, but it being embedded as part of your care journey so that you have awareness of this support.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part. Like you said, being embedded in your care journey so that you know that it is a free resource, like you said, because cost would be the main thing where a lot of people might not be able to do certain things, but knowing that when I'm pregnant, this is like, they'll recommend those. So you partner with the health organizations and they recommend these services to their clients, the health partners, that is doctors and pediatricians. And I think that's such a super amazing thing to be, and to have it a part of your, be covered by your insurance plan is 100% awesome. So let's talk about, let me ask you this question. I was wondering, is your job more so advocacy versus, actually running day-to-day business? You know, because I know it's more of a lot of like advocating for women's health. Do you feel like you have a good balance of that, or is one more than the other?
Wow, that's a really good question. I should like actually monitor that. I mean, it's to me, it's all intertwined, because our mission is to democratize and improve access, and we need to do a lot of education to folks of all different stakeholders, not just health plans and health systems, but of course parents, because parents don't know that there's this trusted healthcare provider that is covered by their health plan starting during pregnancy. It often feels like a later problem, right, during pregnancy. Yeah. So we need to do a lot of education on why it matters to get support. So there's a lot of education that we're doing as part of our care pathway and experience, which is both flavors of advocacy, but also flavors of, you know, execution of our business as well. And so they're very intertwined.
Yeah. You know, what advice would you give another female entrepreneur? You know, just talk about entrepreneurship overall, being a mom, a working mom, entrepreneur, entrepreneur mom. What advice would you give her to go down this journey of entrepreneurship? And how do you balance being a mom, a wife, and being an entrepreneur?
So a couple things, and I'll just tell stories. And I certainly
love stories.
just figuring it out. I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. I say I'm failing. So for me, it's all about near peer mentors. So I have a few friends that are 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of me in this journey. I lean on them big time. And it's a safe space that you can ask the questions that maybe you don't want to expose yourself, right? You don't want, hey, like, what can you break down these terms of, in when you're fundraising for a company, there's a thing called a term sheet. Hey, can you break down what these terms mean? I'm unfamiliar. Having that near peer mentor where you can be asked those questions that you're, quote unquote embarrassed to ask, even though you shouldn't be, because I feel like as women, we're always, what the data shows, it's not just how we feel, but what the data shows is that we're held to a higher standard. And so having that near peer mentor is so important. And I know I turn to my near peer mentors all the time. Secondly, realizing that there is no such thing as balance, and that, I do feel like I'm failing forward, and I do feel like I'm missing out. I had my daughter turn 5 last Thursday, and I got asked at the last minute to go to this event in Boston, which couldn't say no, but meant missing her day of her 5th birthday. And I don't know, that was a super tough call. And there's these moments where I'm like, what the heck am I doing? But I also know myself, and I also know what my mission in life is to really tackle this arena, because I know how I felt with feeding my first daughter, and I don't want any parent ever again to feel that way. And so I know that setting a good example for my, seriously gets me all cheered. I'll blame it on the pregnancy. Setting a good example for my daughters, even if it means, not being there for them 100% of the time.
Yes. They're going to be very proud of mommy. Let me ask you this too. I have such a good question in my mind and just slipped it. But being a working mom, what do you tell the working mom when it comes to breastfeeding? Because I do know now, and correct me if I'm wrong, or is this something that you advocate for? I do know that I've worked with 2 companies prior that actually had lactating rooms on site, which was like the first time I've ever seen those throughout my entire corporate career. You know what I mean? That was only a few years ago, the company I just left, and maybe the company prior to that. Are you beginning to see more of that when it comes to corporate America? Are they beginning to support women's health and understand that breastfeeding is a part of it, and working moms need to have a safe space that they can go to, a private space they can go to make sure they, are able to pump? Are you beginning to see more corporations begin to support that?
So here's the good news. And, I think earlier we were talking about the system isn't set up. There are glimmers of hope. And so here's December 23rd, something called the Pump Act passed. And it helped further close the gap for working parents, in particular working moms, getting access to a lactation room that is not a bathroom stall and not a closet next to the furnace. Now, let's talk about what this means. Before this law, the Pump Act, technically there was another law before it, which was great, but there was a few asterisks in that law. One of the asterisks is, for example, teachers. Teachers didn't have access to lactation rooms technically under federal law. And so,
oh my God.
I know, which is just like comical. So what this Pump Act did is further close the gap. Now, here is the deal though. Technically, the law says 50 employees or more. So again, now small businesses, and it's tough. It's a tough issue. But technically under federal law, employers are supposed to be providing space that's not a bathroom, that's not a closet, next to a furnace, to be able to pump. I also think that in general, we're seeing more modern tools available. Pumping is not perfect, right? The whole thing, it's tough. It is not perfect, and it's getting better and better and better. And there is a long way to go, but I do think systems are evolving. More technologies that are designed with women's needs in mind are coming to the forefront.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just love your passion when you speak about these topics. Let me ask you this question too. Have you always seen yourself being an entrepreneur, or is it something you can say, I just fell into this because when I came a mom, this just happened and I felt the need for it? Or is it something you always wanted to do, was become an entrepreneur?
I'm not one of those people that were like, yes, when I was in, elementary school, I had a lemonade stand or, there's always entrepreneurs that have these great like hustle stories.
Yeah, they do.
I'm an engineer. I'm raised by two engineers. And, I like to say my grandpa was a gambler and my dad was a quality engineer. And so those are like opposing forces, right?
Yeah.
And quality engineers are known as the folks that like don't take risks. And so I am like a perfect hybrid of both is that when I see something like many entrepreneurs, it just was keeping me up at night. And I'm not one to let that go. And by the way, this is a fault of mine too, because it becomes an addiction. I describe entrepreneurship almost as an addiction in that sense, is that I could not do it for better or for worse. And so I think I'm wired more to tackle, as part of a team. I want to emphasize this. I'm not this solo person. Yes, amazing team. I'm hardwired, like a lot of folks, to identify problems and tackle problems together as a team, but also within the system. Less so identify as an entrepreneur, to be honest, even though that is what I am. More about charging with tackling hard problems.
Wow. When I think about entrepreneurship, a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they got to do it all. And I know you keep mentioning team, and you're very proud of your team, and you're a small team, but you're a mighty team. How important is it as an entrepreneur to have a team to help you move forward with your vision? Because some entrepreneurs feel like they could just do it all, and I feel like they kind of lack in certain areas because of that, because they're afraid to relinquish certain duties and responsibilities to people because they're so afraid to give their baby out to other people. How important is, you think, to have that team?
Oh, it's so critical. We would be nowhere without our just stellar team, whether that's our ops, our clinical ops, our marketing, working with payers. And, as a team, like, it's so important that we're humming together. And by the way, this is hard and it's stressful. There's urgency, there's pressure. Yeah. I just have tremendous respect for our team because A, they deal with me all day, but B, they're so mission oriented. And I think it's so important that folks feel that mission, because it's hard and you need to have that mission and passion to be able to make it through those hard days and those hard times. Because when you're tackling these hard, complex issues, you need to have that passion. And, I do teach a little bit part-time and kind of nights and weekends. And one of the things I tell students is it's not about just the idea. You've got to have passion. Yeah. Got to have a superpower expertise tied to it. Right. And then there's got to be a market need. And all of those things raveled together are what create like a fertile environment for tackling and starting an organization or company, whether that's for profit or nonprofit. And but passion will get you through the hard times. And as a team, you need to feel that mission alignment to what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to back over to breastfeeding, when it comes to breastfeeding, I always wonder, what is the father role? Like, what would you tell the father? What would be his role in the breastfeeding process? Because men need to know what they need to do, because they seem like they get such the great end of the stick here. You know what I mean? Like they sleep, they can go to work, they look great, they feel great. Women, we do it all. So what is the father's role in the breastfeeding journey?
Well, what's funny you say that. There's this TikTok video that I love where this dad, bless him, was, in labor and delivery, and he's complaining about how his back hurts because he had to sleep on, they're not, it's not very comfortable, those couches that they have in the labor and delivery.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Like, come on, dude, really?
Yeah, exactly. So we have dads approach us all the time, actually. So dads feel very helpless because they're like, they see their partner struggling, they see their wife struggling. And they're like, what can I do? Well, there's a lot of things you can do. And we were getting asked this question so much by dads, we created a class for them. We created a dad
good
class. It's free. Dads, come check it out on our website. If you go under resources, classes, check it out. So here's some things you can do, dads, for those that are listening, or wives, share this with your dad. One is clean the bottles. Clean the bottle. Right?
Clean the bottles.
Clean the bottles. Right? I started calculating it. It was the equivalent of a 40-hour work week over the course of a few months, the amount of bottle cleaning. Secondly, clean the pump parts. If your wife is pumping, clean the pump parts. These are all things. Third, if your wife is pumping, formula feeding, be part of the overnight feeds. You can do that too. There's a bottle involved. It doesn't need to be the mom all the time. You can be part of that experience as well. It shouldn't all be on the mom. And then
exactly.
Selfishly, fourth, reach out to SimpliFed, simplifed.com, and get an appointment for your partner, right? The whole maternal healthcare journey isn't just on the mom to book the appointments, to do that. That is a lot. That is a lot.
It is.
So going back to what we were talking about earlier, if you hear that your wife needs to book her glucose test, like I was mentioning, do that. Book an appointment on SimpliFed. Make sure, help book her pelvic floor therapy appointment. Something else that's, by the way, covered by health plans. Hooray on that. And so be part of the care experience. It shouldn't all be, that burden shouldn't all be on the mom, and be part of the care team.
Yeah. And I think that's important, to have the support, if you are married, to have the support of the fathers in your life, to have the support of the dad, because it does take a lot of stress off of you, because like I said, sometimes it's like, it's all on you. You deal with all the emotions and stuff like that. This has been very informative. I know a lot of my listeners are going to get a lot of great information from this show. So just tell people, how does SimpliFed work? Like, what do they need to do in order to can they only go through an insurance company, or can they go on the website and do things for themselves?
Yeah, so good news is, come to our website, simplifed.com. It's going to want to autocorrect to simplified, but simplifed.com. Or text us. So you don't even need to book directly through our website. We know a lot of parents, especially new parents, you're holding a baby in one arm, your phone in the other. So you can text us at 888-458-1364, and we'll get you started on your journey. We'll ask you some quick questions. And then essentially we'll check your health plan coverage, but no matter what, we'll provide you access to support, such as VR classes, etc. But come to our website, simplifed.com, and who will be greeting you on the other end of that, either form or text, is a capability, an amazing human being we call our SimpliFed ally. They're like your navigator in the virtual manifestation of that person at the front desk. You'll get greeted by an ally. Often they're a peer mom, and they'll work you through, get you scheduled, send you a reminder, do all that fun stuff. You can text them if you have a question about your appointment time or needing to reschedule, any of that fun stuff. They'll advocate to you, to your health plan. If they're not covering, they're your trusted resource. And then we'll get you set up with appointments. Most of our health plans cover at least 6 appointments. So this is something that starts during pregnancy, but then extends postpartum, and you have access to ongoing support. And so come check out our website, or come to our Instagram at SimpliFedBaby, and be part of our community as well.
Yeah, this is really good. I'm definitely going to have all the info on SimpliFed and all the show notes, and on YouTube as well. So they're going to have everything they need to get. There can be no reason why they can't get in contact with you. So for what they need. But this has been such a great show, Andrea. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to ask you one more question that I ask every guest that come on my show. What was one of the best advice you received from another woman?
My mom, in around having a baby, said, "Don't be a hero." And it was like, don't feel like you need to, be at your best always, or also reach out for help. And that's one thing we always say to parents is, we're here to support you when and where you need it, judgment free, validate how you feel, and talk through your options. And so I think that's so important that folks meet parents where they're at, as we talked about earlier, without judgment. Do a lot of listening and just supporting and rooting on your family and friends.
Yeah, this has been great, Andrew. I really appreciate you being on the show. I've learned a lot. I know this is the conversation I wanted to have, and I'm glad we were able to have it. And guys, listen, that's going to do it for us. I hope you guys are just informed as I am and are ready to tackle your breastfeeding or baby feeding journey. Make sure you get in touch with SimpliFed. I am Shani Sanders. This is the Girl Techno Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.